in the archives at the Vatican, first of all, it's about 5 miles of archives underground and very, very secure access. In other words, you can't just go, oh, I'm going to go check out the archives underground. No, you have to be a security cleared, almost top secret cleared based on their standards to get down there. But they have in there so many incredible discoveries, so much knowledge and wisdom that have been stolen, literally stolen from all around the world. And of course, the Library of Alexandria, that was a book heist. The fire was a distraction. The real story of Alexandria, it was a book heist. It was a knowledge theft. They stole the knowledge. They left a few books burning here and then they burned it down to the ground. But the vast majority of the knowledge and wisdom stored at Alexandria was siphoned off and taken to that underground, I call it an underground base at the Vatican. Down there also, according to even some Jesuits, are bones of actual quote unquote alien beings, information about advanced beings that visited this planet, the Anunnaki, according to the Dogon, the Nomo, and the Sumerians call them the Pantheon, call them the Anunnaki Pantheon out of Sumeria. They call them Nitiru out of Africa. They had all these relics and artifacts of these particular people, even out of Greece. They have all this down there. They have information even out of Iraq that shows and proves that advanced races had lived on this planet long before this current civilization here exists. I'm talking about eons and eons ago, super highly advanced with technologies and capabilities of flight and everything else, weapons of war that existed. All that information is stored underneath the Vatican archives, along with some of the most incredible texts and books and inventions that ever existed on this planet. And they siphon it away, and they're hoarding all of that wisdom and knowledge so that they can keep control and power and domination over the world. And guess what? It's working. You know, if the public knew that long before Jesus, long before Moses and all these people, you know, supposedly were even born or existed, that thousands of years before them, an advanced race lived on this planet, built an Atlantean global civilization, probably Atlantean interplanetary civilization, that had capability of space flight and everything else, and that they most likely genetically modified the existing hominids, which then became Homo sapiens sapien, in order to put us all in slavery and make us do the workload for them. If they knew that, those stories and those tales from the Sumerian tablets, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, Tibetan Book of the Dead, the Egyptian Book of Going Forth by Day, aka the Egyptian Book of the Dead, you know, the Enuma Elish and the Seven Tablets of Creation, the Epic of Atrahasis, and the myth of Adapa, if they knew that all these texts predominantly made up the majority of the Bible, then we would be like, well, what are you guys preaching to us? This is all fake. This is all lies. And we know that in the Emerald Tablets, you know, which is my book compendium of the Emerald Tablets, that the majority of Jesus' teachings in the New Testament come directly from the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which are 38,000-year-old teachings. So they must control and hide and secure evidence of this information and this knowledge to keep people basically in this level of ignorance where they can continue to control them and steal their money. The Council of Nicaea came together, built up the mythology. They added to the story. They took from a lot of ancient texts and tablets, and then they kind of curated this book, which they want to call it a canonized Bible, right? So they took from here, took from there, this tablet, this scripture, that papyrus, this Nag Hammadi piece. We like this coming out of this text over here. And then they kind of just culminated together and then remixed it, put their own spin on it to make sure that slavery was approved and okay, right? Well, we want to add that in there. Got to make sure the slavery is approved, you know, because people were enslaving each other since back in before the black slaves. I'm talking about in the ancient times, slaves were already going on. Slavery was already going on. Yeah, sure, it's nothing new. Yeah. And then so you had that. And then, of course, we want to collect a lot of money. So they have to pay us. We got to make sure we got the money. You got to pay. You know what I'm saying? And you got to do the labor and you got to bring the offerings because we ourselves are not going to go out and hunt and grow farms and everything else. So you guys, you're going to have to bring these offering stuff. We want it already cooked. So make sure it's a burnt offering. Make sure you drain the blood. Make sure it's healthy for us and bring us your first harvest because we want the freshest fruit and the freshest vegetables. We don't want the stale stuff. Yes. We want your freshest wheat and the freshest breads. And so people would come down and bring everything to the church and give it all away, along with whatever money they had left. And these people would live like fat cats, literally off of pimping the knowledge and understanding of what's going on and tricking people into believing that they had some access to divine power and knowledge when they were just really high-level pimps, is what I call them, man. And the people, the ignorance of the people, you almost can't blame them, but yet at the same time, it's like, how can so many masses of people stand up and fall for this? But it happens. But also, you got to remember the way that they went around, the way that the Council of Nicaea put this in place with Rome. And Rome said, we're now going to dominate the planet with this religion. Mm-hmm. So they combined their beliefs with the Christianity, all right, because they felt like keeping it separate was creating too much, anger between the two sides. And everybody wanted to go head to head. So, we're going to combine it. We'll add our stuff in with their stuff, and we'll make it a national religion. But now here's the trick. As Rome was on its global escapade trying to dominate and take over the planet, everywhere they went, they would then instill and install this Christianity, this Catholic Christianity in those areas. But this is how they did it. People believed that Christianity was spread by love and the good news, and no, it was spread by rape, bloodshed, murdering, and killing. And so when they came to your town, they literally would take your women and your children. They would, they would take the leader of that village or whatever. They would show that you guys are going to bow down to us. You're going to follow this religion. You're going to speak our language. And they'll make an example out of somebody, and then everybody else would follow suit. And if they didn't, then they would say, okay, we're going to give you a lot of these torture devices. They would have the Pope's spear, all right, which is still in the museums right now, which they would stick that into a woman's personal parts, and it would explode on the inside of her. They would have this triangular pyramid with a spire on top, and they would reel a man up and down and let it go up into his back door over and over again until he died. They had all these torture mechanisms. They tortured and killed over 80 million people over the course of 700 years under the order of the popes, in order to spread love and peace and Christianity all around the planet. And so, but this is, again, all with the authority of Rome. So this global conquest to spread this and collect money was all done by bloodshed and torture, not by love and peace. Even the depiction of Jesus was switched over to the face that became the global popular face. That was actually Caesar Borgia, who was actually one of the sons of an actual pope, and killed his own brother to try to take his place. This guy was just an evil, brutal, killing ruler. His father commissioned the artist to paint his image as the image of Jesus, and that image still propagates the planet till this very day. So the image that a lot of people are praying to is not the Jesus that they think it is, but actually a natural-born killer. It's great marketing, great propaganda, subliminal information, subliminal messages and teachings, and it just gets birthed into the genome, and it passes on from generation to generation. Same thing happened with this Jesus figure. His name isn't even Jesus. His name was Yeshua.
Yeshua, okay?
Yeah, that's the actual name. And so, but again, Jesus, the J is a new letter. It didn't even exist until recently. I mean, so we're talking about, okay, what is really the name? Isus. When you look into the root word of that, and you go back into some of the ancient tongues, you find out it's Hail Zeus. So people that are calling on the name of Jesus all the time, they're calling for help from Zeus, which is actually a converted name from the Sumerian pantheon. So they're calling on Enlil, is what they're calling on. They're not calling on any son of the creator of the universe. And this is why a lot of prayers don't actually work. People don't understand the power of speech and then calling on names and the cymatic frequencies they create. Then when you're completely ignorant to what you're really saying, it's no wonder why billions of prayers go up every single day all around the world. But then again, look at the state of the world on a daily basis. You can clearly see that if somebody has a positive outcome, more than likely it's just luck. And I want to add one thing to this before we go on too. I want people to understand I'm not an atheist. I believe in a creator of the universe. Yeah. Because the quantum physics proves that we're living inside of a creation. There's no way to dispute that. There's no way to doubt it. We're living in a programmed holographic light matrix. That is a method used for this creation, but we are in this. It's created by an entity. And I believe that there is a God. I just believe that the biblical version is not specifically talking about the creator of the universe. I believe those are the words of men about men that have manipulated it to be God. And actually, the word God in the Bible is mistranslated by accident on purpose. The original root word for that is gods with an S. And everywhere where you see God singular is actually supposed to have an S on the end. So there's so much going on. There's been tainted so much by man, but I do believe that there is a God. But again, you have to research everything that you believe in, especially if you're looking for this information to carry you into eternity. You should know every little tiny detail about it. You shouldn't just take it point in fact from somebody standing at a pulpit. You should be the expert on it yourself. Time really doesn't exist. Clocks exist. Time doesn't exist.
Right.
And like you said, we've been given this functional arrow of time, which puts us in one specific direction so that we can organize our thoughts and our days and our years and weeks and what we're going to do and where we're going to meet up with somebody and everything else. So we have this ability to coordinate and collaborate with each other, like how we're here today at this specific time. However, if you understand that time is also an illusion, it's something that you can use as a tool, but if you also understand that it's an illusion, then you can actually master time and you can maximize what you're doing on this planet. Because if you go any high in all the higher dimensions, we're in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and all the way up.
For the layman that don't understand what being in the third dimension means, can you give us a breakdown?
Okay, sure. So if you draw a line on a piece of paper, that's the first dimension. If you then connect those lines and create a house on a piece of paper, that's a two-dimensional structure, or you can move that into a computer. Anything you see in a computer that looks 3D is actually 2D. All right, so, and because we're in the third, we can see down into 2D, we can see all the way down, obviously, into 1D, and we can manipulate those dimensions from our higher selves. Now, now there are beings in fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensions. There's people above us. Now, because of that, they see us and they recognize the past, present, and future operating all at the same time. Everything's happening at once.
Right.
There is no separation between the past, present, and the future. The arrow doesn't exist. Because they're higher than us, they can look down into the third and they can see into what we're doing. So the fourth dimension is something called a tesseract. And if you go into the ancient text, it's Metatron's cube. Meta, M-E-T-A, meta, obviously, the metaverse, right? They got that from Metatron's cube. It's a fourth dimensional substructure. Now this fourth dimension is really something called a quasi-crystal. And this quasi-crystal in the fourth dimension, it casts a shadow, and the shadow that it casts, it creates the realm that we're living in here. We're living in a shadow of a higher dimension. That shadow creates a third dimension. It actually creates a fractal of it, creates this fractal holographic matrix that we're actually maneuvering in the third dimension right now.
So would the fourth dimension be considered a dimension of time?
You can address a fourth dimension of time like Albert Einstein was saying if you're just looking at a third plus a fourth being the arrow. But when you actually move up into another dimension, we now know in quantum physics that there is actually a fourth dimension. So all dimensions are in 90-degree angles of each other. And according to quantum theory right now, we're really anticipating that there's at least 11 dimensions, or otherwise the universe would collapse. So there really is truly a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, all the way up. Not just the arrow of time. That's just something extra. They try to make it make sense back then by saying the fourth dimension is time, but time is actually not a dimension at all.
So now that's a very interesting, because it's a lot that I'm sure that everybody's like, all right, I thought I was smart, and then I tried to keep up, and then I got left behind.
Right.
You understand me? And what I want to bring people up to speed. You understand me? And the ideas in correlation to the analogy of how we're moving as a collective human species, specifically with technology, right?
Yeah.
Because I think it can be connected to, cellular technology, right? Going from 3G to 4G. And, going from 3G to 4G to 5G, which allows us to be able to do different things that we normally weren't able to do that weren't possible, right? Let's say you got 3G phones, it's hell, you make better, faster calls, you understand me, connected. Then you get to 4G and you're talking about now applications and streaming, right? And Wi-Fi, right? Being able to connect within systems and the Internet of Things. And then 5G allowing completely new systems of possibility. And this was where I think a lot of people missed the point in 2020 when everybody was going through the craze of whether 5G was killing them or not. It was more so what was 5G going to do? right? So the NFTs and the Web3, right? And you're talking about, you know, AR, VR, spatial reality, all these different things are not possible unless you have 5G being in connection. So it was representing a new world being produced outward. And it wasn't just an accident that NFTs came after the pandemic and this technology came after. There was something happening at that same point in time that for me was entering into a new phase of the world, a new dimension, a new speed, right? And that speed, you know, can be known as time, if you will. And a lot of people without that ability to process at a high level, right? Like you got bandwidth, you got landline speed, you got Wi-Fi speed, you got 5G speed, you get left behind. So everything seems that it's moving fast, but that's only because you're not moving as fast.
Right.
Everything stands still when you're moving at the same speed. You understand me? And so what I've always tried to do is keep people up to speed where we at in the dimension that we're currently in, or a little bit above, so you can be ahead of your time as a visionary. Because the fastest speed is the mind. You understand me? Being able to travel in your thought. Right? That can that can take you into time, that can take you ahead of time, if you will. But the ideas of time itself, I love the concept that it being an illusion, because, you know, even the era where time is connected to language, right? That I wrote in my book about how when we speak in the English language, you know, it's a very future tense reference, right? So we're always referencing the future as we speak. I will be there, I'm going to do this. And we have so many different phrases within the language. We're always pushing ourselves, not connecting to the present, but at a later point in day and time. You understand me? And I think that learning to be present connects us to the power that we have in control over. And then once you have that power, then you know how to create seeds that can control the rest of the time. But you said something about beings, right? Now, we always look at ourselves as people, but then when we talk about people, you're talking about human beings, right? The being part is not something that the average person understands, right? And then when you're saying that there are other beings, who are these other beings?
I believe personally, just based off of my research, and I've gone through now over 1,000 scriptures, texts, papyruses, cuneiform tablets from all over the world. They all have a very similar story. And all these ancient civilizations talk about beings, not just beings who came here from other planets, people that look like us and we look like them. In other words, not identical, but very similar. In other words, a bilateral, bipedal hominid of some type that can maneuver around, that has appendages that can manipulate the environment, because without that, you can't move out into space and other places. And they also talk about multidimensional. You get into like the non-commodity and stuff like that. You're talking about multidimensional beings. And so in physics, in quantum physics in particular, they started theorizing on these dimensions and were able to even analyze and discover some that they actually do exist. And on top of that, they realized that the dimensions are packed so tight on top of one another that if you can phase shift your atomic structure, your subatomic frequency, you can walk right into another dimension. And so they started postulating, what if beings from higher dimensions or some of these apparitions and these paranormal phenomena that we're seeing, are they able to maybe take a glimpse or a peek? Are they phasing through into our universe? And so from higher dimensions. And so they started really theorizing it. It seems to be, and based on my research, that there's people living everywhere. Not just, and I'm not talking about little green men with antenna. I think that there's people living all throughout this universe in the third dimension. And I think there's people living all throughout even higher multiple dimensions, maybe at a certain level, a certain height in those dimensions. Maybe they don't have a real corporeal body.
Right, non-physical.
Non-physical, you know what I'm saying? But I believe that the consciousness is there.
Now that part is interesting, the non-physical aspect, because I understand that and I can believe in that idea and that concept. It's like what people think, I think of angels as angles. Right? Because, you know, angels are supposed to exist in between dimensions. You understand me? And angles, you understand me, are dimensions.
That's right.
And so it's like perspective is your angle in which you see things and view things. And oftentimes angels come and gives us new perspective, new thoughts. You understand me? Arriving from a different, completely dimension of thought that we couldn't arrive at ourselves.
Correct.
You know, but at the same time, when you're talking about non-corporeal bodies or non-physical bodies, you understand me? I like that concept because when you're talking about time, you're talking about light, you're talking about all of these different ways in which light or energy can exist within, and consciousness, right? The awareness of, output. You understand? Mathematical output, right? Do you believe that the universe is mathematical?
Oh, absolutely. The language of God is mathematics, because mathematics can literally explain everything that we experience and everything also that exists. Even the fact that we're existing in a light matrix can be proven through mathematics. So we're living in a matrix that's basically written on mathematics called Adinkra codes. And these Adinkra codes go all the way back to the Dogons. The Dogon tribes out of Mali, Africa. They actually originated these codes, and they were given these codes by the Nomo, and they learned them. They drew them out as art forms. But now, and they put them on clothing and blankets and everything else.
So the Dogon tribe, very interesting tribe, that was able to discover, systems before telescopes and things of that nature.
Yeah.
So how did they arrive to be able to, because I know a lot of people, I posted about this not too long ago, people want to understand how the hell did the Dogon tribe arrive to it, right? I just subscribe to, us being, gods, melanated beings on this planet Earth. We connected in a way that we just don't understand anymore. You understand me? And being multidimensional, I think about physics in that aspect where you're talking about things being entangled. Not Will and Jada entanglements, you understand me? But quantum entanglements.
Right, yeah.
And, once you understand that, being multidimensional to me is easily understood from the fact that you can break us down to atoms, right? And then cells, and then we get into our skin and we see our physical. But from an atomic level, those are different laws, right? And we're made up of atoms. So that an aspect of our existence is obeying different laws of the universe. And then our cells are obeying different laws, of gravity and magnetism, right, and flow. But then we as human beings are obeying different laws, right, of gravity and magnetism in the universe. And then we forget about the universal laws of our multidimensional self because we only know man's law.
Exactly.
You understand me? So I think being multidimensional is easily understood as above, so below. You understand me? But the idea of the Dogon people being able to chart systems, how were they able to figure that out? You understand me? Before the Europeans had an idea of what was out there.
Right. Well, to be honest with you, if you go all the way back to the ancient Dogon history, before they got to Mali, they were in the land of Kem. They were the original inhabitants of the land of Kem before it was called Egypt. And so...
Kem meaning the land of blacks?
The land of blacks, correct. Exactly, land of blacks. Kem was black, it's all black. That's in the tablets.
So Kem, there's so much Jews in here, but so in Kem, you understand me, that's Africa.
Yeah.
Right? I know everybody calls the Middle East as if...
it's Africa.
The Middle East is the most funniest made up concept, magical idea on the planet.
I know.
Because it's like, you have in Africa, but no, this is like the Middle East Africa. It doesn't count for sub-Saharan Africa, and Northern Africa, and East Africa. But it's Africa, right?
It's Africa.
Yeah, so...
I mean,
for those who don't
Cairo
know,
is in Africa.
Cairo's in Africa.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? I know, people still get it wrong till this day.
That's crazy.
It surprises me. But so they, according to their records and their handed down verbal history, their records are etched into caves and stuff like that. The Nomo came here from Sirius B. Okay, so there's a trinary star system that we know of called Sirius, the Sirius star system, A, B, and C. B is a failed star. In other words, it ran out of fuel, turned into a white dwarf. These beings were orbiting on a planet that orbited that star, according to the Dogon, not me. Came here, they're called the Nomo. Dogon called them the Nomo. Taught them all about the star system, the orbital pattern, our entire solar system, the names, the shapes, the sizes, the colors of all the planets in our solar system, all the planetary alignments. And they even knew that that white dwarf star was so gravitationally heavy that one spoonful couldn't be lifted by over 1 million men. They even knew that. We learned that in quantum mechanics and quantum physics in the 1970s, 1980s. We hypothesized it. And obviously we couldn't even see that star until the 1970s, sorry.
So when did they record it?
Thousands of years ago.
Thousands. Of years ago.
It's like, we're talking about over 6,000-7,000 years. They even had depictions of them and everything else, and they taught them how to make these Dogon masks, but they also gave them the Adinkra codes. Now these Adinkra codes look like designs on clothing and patterns. when you turn these designs into three-dimensional structures, they become something called error-correcting codes. And Professor James S. Gates, a black professor who used to be the science advisor for Obama when he was in office, he's now the professor, I believe, at the University of Maryland in supersymmetry and theoretical physics. He discovered these, he rediscovered them, obviously, and he turned them into three-dimensional objects, and then from there he found the error-correcting codes. He was analyzing and accessing information about the ether of space-time, and he discovered that the entire ether, in other words, everything this soup that we're operating in throughout the entire universe, is running on a specific code. It's called an Adinkra code. It's called error-correcting codes. The same exact kind of codes that run search engines and web browsers. Wow. That's what's running the universe.
So listen now. At certain points in time in the interview, the glasses got to come on. This was one of those points in time when we're talking about Adinkra codes and going into multidimensional aspects of thinking. You know, this episode is brought to you by Gold Water. But, you know, being connected to the stars, you understand me, and being connected to the universe is a very interesting aspect of thinking. You know, I grew up, you know, in the Nation of Islam.
Okay.
And in the Nation of Islam, there is a lot of, you know, astronomical teachings, you know, about astronomy and sizes of the planets and distance. That was one of the first things we had to learn.
Wow.
Right, where the distance between the planets, the speed of light, the speed of sound, right?
Wow.
You know, the total square mileage of the water, earth, land, mountains, rivers, lakes, right? Everything. So, you know, deep into the teachings of Elijah Muhammad is astronomy, right? He wasn't really into astrology because he said it was too much guesswork. But astronomy he was into because it was mathematical. And you're talking about, you know, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, for a black man to be teaching astronomy, especially the poor black people in America. It was it was
light years ahead of his time.
It was an interesting indication of, you know, where he got his knowledge. Because he had a third grade education, but he was teaching about astronomy. Right? And he would dare the scholars of the world to prove him wrong. Of course, none of them did, right? Because he was talking about Pluto back in those days before they would recognize Pluto, right? And I used to always think about why. And one of the last books that he wrote was called The Theology of Time.
Oh, wow.
And The Theology of Time was, it's not a book for the beginner, initiate. You understand me? It's definitely more novice when you get into your understanding. And then that's when he proposed and he talked about alien life on Mars. Right, he talked about the different planets, who can and who can't go there, what they were doing and building. Like, he has very detailed composition of thought on extraterrestrial life. You understand me? And the origins of the planet itself and the universe itself. You know, and it's very interesting because we often believe that our connection to, you know, the way that the Dogons were able to chart the stars is lost. Right? You know, but that knowledge has always been within our DNA and always been passed down within us. There's just certain keepers of that knowledge, right? And those keepers of the knowledge are not often listened to because, especially today, we in a very static, distracted, low-level way of thinking. So it's like you have to think about the mind, and it's not even to say that they were the most intelligent people on the planet, but connected, you understand me, as being different. Like, that's a different type of intelligence. Because we only measure academia or scholarship intelligence that you get from universities, but we don't measure the intelligence you get from the universe. You understand me? I want to talk about, you know, I don't want to leave time in the star system just yet, but I do want to talk about your relationship with astronomy and whether you believe astrology to be a true science or not.
Well, I'm actually an amateur astronomer.
Okay.
I've been doing that for a long time.
Yes, sir.
You know, I have a real nice telescope. I have a Celestron SLR, and it's a real nice telescope. You can actually see the rings of Saturn. You can see Jupiter. You can see Mars. I took a famous picture that's been circulating for years of Mars during the summer. When you take a picture of Mars during the summer, it actually has green, it has blues. It's not a red planet. You can see that the ice caps are smaller, which means they've melted. There's a lot of liquid water on the planet. And a lot of those greens, I believe, is vegetation. You know, and now all the science data is coming back out from NASA. Now all of a sudden press releases are coming out. The soil on Mars is better for growing crops than on Earth. Now they're saying there's billions of tons of liquid water on Mars now.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
I can believe that.
And they're also talking about the fact that there's an atmosphere that is the equivalent to being like 18,000 feet above sea level, but that's like going to Peru. I'm going to Peru in a few weeks, right? So same thing. You got to acclimate to that height, to that low oxygen, but you can still breathe as long as you stay close to the ground. Once you go higher up, it's going to be very dangerous. But if you're within like 10 feet of the ground, you can actually breathe. You just need to acclimate. So all of a sudden, all this is coming out because why? They're getting ready to, you know, to build an infrastructure up there, in my opinion, and do a breakaway civilization. That's what the whole Elon Musk and all that's on Mars is all about. So I got really into it. Now, one of the reasons why I built the underground shelter that you mentioned, called Fort Terra Nova, that was back in 2012, was because I was analyzing the precession of the equinoxes, the movement of the stars across the sky, the constellations across the sky. I noticed that they were speeding up. Based on my calculations, it was moving, instead of 27,000 years for one cycle, it was actually averaging around 25,000. I'm like, are the books wrong? Are these great astronomers wrong, or what's going on? And the more I dug into it, the more I looked into it, I realized the only thing that can explain this is if our sun is orbiting something. It would need breakaway speed, and it would, you know, it would speed up and it would slow down, speed up and slow down. So I started digging into that. I found out that they had something they were calling nemesis out there, something that they couldn't exactly say what it was, but they were saying there was a huge object out there orbiting our sun, and our sun was orbiting it. And they found it about 3 or 4 years ago. They labeled it Planet 9, but really is a brown dwarf star. They found a brown dwarf orbiting our sun. So we live in a binary solar system. We don't have one sun, we actually have two. One's a brown dwarf, which you can only see with 2-mass infrared mode on your telescope. You have to have a digital scope to see that because it's so dim, you can't see with the naked eye.
Is the sun black or white?
The sun is white. It's bright white, so it's not black actually. If you actually were able to go out and look at the sun above the atmosphere, you'll find out that it's actually bright white light. When it hits our atmosphere, it scatters, and when the light breaks down, we see more of the yellows because the blues are kept up there. So the sun actually is bright white.
Well, some say that the sun is black, but it's the charge of light that gives it the appearance of white.
Well, it's a nuclear explosion. Now, what's interesting about the sun is that a lot of the light doesn't even get to the surface for like 100, 200,000 years. So it could be both, a little bit of both. It could be that it is a dark sun, but the light is what we can see. For example, the sun is 8 light minutes away from Earth. So if the sun went dark right now, we'd have daylight for 8 minutes. Now the light,
and that's 90 million miles away.
90 million miles away, right? And the light that's formed on the inside from the collision of the atoms on the inside, the nuclei, when they're colliding and splitting, that light doesn't go straight from the center core right out to the outside of the sun. It actually meanders through the inside of the sun for thousands and thousands of years before it releases itself and leaves the corona. Then it takes 8 minutes to get to Earth. So the light that we're experiencing right now is hundreds of thousands of years old before it even got to us. You know what I'm saying? Before it left our sun.
So light is very interesting. You understand me? I want to talk about light and water for a second. Look like we might get to the whole elemental period by the time we're done with this conversation. So, I remember before I got on a journey of, teaching the financial literacy and liberation aspect, my deeper studies was into quantum physics and science and psychology and, a multitude of different things that I believe would help guide enlightenment. You understand me?
Yeah.
And so studying light, I started studying the 4th phase of water, right? Where in between, for those who don't know, water has 4 different phases. Some people say 5, but we're going to the 4. You understand me? Solid, liquid, gas. You understand me? And I used to think about that because I say the only difference between the water and each structure is the proton arrangement, not the proton count.
Right.
So it's not something new that's happening to the water that is entered into it that changes its state. It's the arrangement, you understand me, of its energy. And so when I thought about that, and then of course, light is energy, so we can say that it's light that changes, and then water has the most different states out of any other element. And so I liken that to consciousness, right? That our consciousness can be in rigid states, it can be in flow states, right? But what changes your consciousness going from a lower consciousness to a higher consciousness is enlightenment.
Yeah.
Right? You know, when we read, right, I always say we re-add, right? We're re-adding knowledge that is already in us because we're not actually, nothing physical is going in there. Nothing is going to tinkering and changing with your brain. It's literally electricity changing the arrangement, you understand me, and the structure of your state of consciousness. And you can see a symbol, right, and gain enlightenment, right? And it can cause an inner knowing that can have your mind, you know, raising this vibration, right? And you know, that's not something that we often think about. And a lot of people gonna be like, oh, this conversation ain't gonna high level for real, right? But I say the fourth phase of water on purpose because, you know, everything around us emits energy. Every single thing. We walk into a room, we say, damn, the vibe is off.
Right.
We don't realize we speaking in scientific terms. You understand me?
Real science.
Yeah, it's true science. The vibe is off, but you have an intuitive connection on what that vibe is. Right? That there's friction in the air, that the ions, you understand me, are positive or negative charge when you go into different environments. And so if we understood that, then number one, we will create a more conscious sensitivity to the environments that we go to. But we are in environments that are often very austere to, you know, our embodiment, our aura, you understand me, and who we are, because, you know, for those who don't know, we emit an aura from our heart, you understand me? And when that is pierced, that's when we start to get sick. And we are in environments we're not supposed to be in that are in friction to whatever our vibration is. That's when we feel off. Right? And there's only certain people, and I'm a Meticulous Farrakhan said, somebody asked him once, they said, how are you able to go into all of these different type of environments, you understand me, and not be changed by them or not feel sick by them sometimes because you're around all these different type of people? And he said, I bring my own atmosphere.
That's right.
You understand me? Like, I bring my own atmosphere.
I know exactly what he means. I walk into a place and I put a bubble around myself. I just literally put an energy bubble. I just see it coming out of my head and wrapping myself. And I walk through, I got my energy bubble. You know?
No, that's super key. I mean, so when we go to water, right, we 70 to 90% water. Some people say I'm basically almost 100% because even those things can be made up of water. But when we're talking about water and the effect that light has on water, right? Because, you know, water is charged by light, and water has memory in it. You understand me? I think it was Dr. John Pollock that was giving a breakdown on the fourth phase of water. And it was one of the same doctors who discovered, I believe, HIV back in the day, who was trying to figure out ways to utilize sound waves to create medicine. You understand me? And basically that every disease has a frequency, and if he can counteract that disease with a dominant frequency of the cure, then he can cure that person. Because water traps frequency in its protons. You understand me? So that if our environment is a certain vibration, then we take on that vibration of that environment.
Absolutely.
It's the same study about rice and water. When you speak over certain things, you're trapping that, right? So that's why nobody who's angry should ever serve you food. Or they who dislike. If you make a waiter mad, don't eat the food from there anymore. You got to keep them happy and pleasant. Otherwise, they can give you food poisoning just based on their negative energy. Right? Exactly. But I bring that up to bring this. You know, as human beings, the things that we should know the most about, we know the least about. And that's being a human being. Right? You know, water and light, right? We are light beings and we are water beings. You understand me? Wholly. So I studied that to understand the effects that the environment has on myself. That's knowledge of self, to the knowledge of cells.
You got to do that.
So, you know, what is it about light itself as a messenger of information that is important that we observe from the things that we eat, besides the breakdown I just gave, right? Where we go to, but at the same time being a way for our brains to be able to travel, right? Like, and then can you correlate it into biophotons? You understand me? You know, when I be thinking, I just be having thoughts, so they jump over. That's why I had to call this show a conversation. So, as light beings, what does that mean?
Well, one thing people don't understand is that we are all made of actual light. Well, everything in the third dimension is made of light. And so we are light and light is us. We know that the illusion of this avatar body and this chair I'm sitting on and the table that you're sitting at, the illusion of it's there. What is this? This is slowed down light waves. When you slow light down and then consciousness interacts with it, it collapses it into what we call solid matter. So solid matter is actually an illusion.
Right.
For example, the only thing stopping my hand from going through this chair is the repulsion of the electromagnetic frequencies. I don't actually touch the chair. You don't touch anything.
Yeah.
And so if I can phase shift the atomic frequency of my hand to match the same frequency of the atoms in this chair, I pass my hand right through it because atoms are 99.999% empty space.
Right, like pouring liquid into liquid.
Exactly, you know. That's why when galaxies merge together, like we're merging with a galaxy right now called Sagittarius, you don't see any real collisions happening or anything around
Shout out
us.
to my Sagittarius out there.
Yeah, because, you know, galaxies are mostly empty space, just like atoms. Everything's a fractal. So we are light beings, and also because of that, we're a fractal. We have consciousness, which is also light. And
what is a fractal?
A fractal is when you take, for example, if you look at a hologram, and you go to one part of the hologram, one tiny piece, and look at it, you'll see the entire image in that smallest piece. The only thing you lose is a little bit of resolution, okay? And so it's important for people to understand that this entire realm is a fractal of a whole. In other words, as above, so below.
So if you look at an atom, it gives you the whole thing.
It gives you the whole thing, absolutely.
So human beings, would you consider a fractal of the universe?
We're a fractal of the universe, and our consciousness, even though it's one consciousness, it's also a fractal of the main master consciousness. And it's really incredible that every thought that you think in your skull, it leaves your skull as a form of a light wave. Every time you think.
Talk to him then.
Yeah, man. Every light wave, every time you think. And we know this because we could put a cap on your head in a laboratory, put a little electrodes on it, sensors, and tell you to think about something, and it's going to show up on the computer screen because the computer's reading the light waves coming out of your skull. We can't see those waves because we can only see 1% of the light spectrum as human beings.
Right.
We're limited. We don't see gamma rays. We don't see ultraviolet.
What affects us the most?
Yeah, exactly. Those are the things that are all around us that are really interacting with us all the time in our brains too.
Right. And that's what I was getting to with the water, because the ultraviolet radiation is what causes that fourth phase to flow, like blood flow within our bodies and things of that nature, by creating a separation between positive and negative charge. And in between that small space right there is where it creates that charge and flow. And they was doing a study where they tried to take two prods, put one on the other end to create energy. Yeah. Right? But go ahead.
Yeah, so that's what it is. So, you know, we have this power of thought, which you were talking about, having the ability to even travel through light, leaving your mind and traveling light. You can actually connect to other realms, other dimensions through conscious thought. Quantum entangling your light waves with other light waves that exist in the universe, not only in the third dimension, but even multiple dimensions.
Right. So like quantum entanglement, for those who don't understand, are two basically atoms that are entangled with one another, even if they are at vast distances.
Right.
Right. And Einstein called it, spooky. Right, because he ain't understand what was going on.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But we understand. It ain't spooky.
He said a spooky action at a distance.
Yeah.
And you can entangle atoms, you can entangle photons, which are lights. Right. So
do you think that's what happened when people fall in love? They consider to be soulmates?
I think it happens. Well, your mind can entangle with somebody on the other side of the universe. A lot of the times, you can say, "Oh, I came up with this great idea."
Right.
But you really didn't. You just downloaded that idea because you entangled with the information.
Entangled.
That's all it is. All information actually exists. And now, like big time mainstream quantum physicists and theoretical physicists are admitting that this is true now.
Yeah.
Like it's not woo-woo science no more. This is like what you're getting taught in university. When I was at MIT studying applied neuroscience, one of the things we learned about was this exact thing. The fact that not only can you walk in a room like you were saying earlier and you can sense the vibe and you can actually transmit negative or positive energy to somebody. Somebody's at a low frequency and you walk in positive and high frequency enough, your light being can actually raise their energy level.
Right.
And if you're not high enough and they're low, they can actually drop your energy level.
Right.
It depends on how strong you are consciously. And then also we talked about the fact that we can entangle with information throughout the entire multiverse. So information can even come from other universes into your own mind. And if you're able to discern that information, you can actually, if you can put the action behind it, it could be one of the greatest inventions. It could be Web3, it could be, whatever we got going on now. NFTs or whatever, all this stuff comes from other places.
So biophotons is what I wanted to get to. Because biophotons to me is very interesting, because I think it's like taking the concept of science and physics and being able to apply it, you understand me, in a real world sense, and connect, yourself and your willpower, right? It was Dr. Wesley. He has the Book of God, and he has a very, very dope book, very amazing book. Everybody should study it. But he gives a breakdown of biophotons, and this is one of my first introductions to it, when he was talking about a study that was done at this university, to study biophoton levels, which is basically, for those who don't know, is light within the human body.
Right.
And so one of the things that they studied was the fact that during a time that a patient was sick, you understand me, the light that they emitted glowed brighter, right? And of course that was because the body was working to heal itself. Yeah. And the thought process was that if you go back to ancient human being origins, that those human beings were just light beings, complete light beings. And as I'm positing this thought right now, as melanin, you understand me, overtook those bodies, and you're talking about, that very dark melanin, and then you have light, piercing out of that, which used to be where hair follicles are, you understand me? Then you're talking about a blue aura, or a blue hue, right? And so in ancient texts where you see a lot of the blue representation of gods or beings, there were the representation of the original man and woman as light beings. Yeah. Now, the way that I connected to science more so is the idea that, our mind has light within it, right? And it communicates directly with the light outside us, and that this is scientifically proven that we can think things and bend the wheel of reality around us. Like the Matrix played with the concepts and ideas. The spoon doesn't exist idea, but more so is, each one of us have different levels of consciousness and conscious power, and the ability to bend and change reality around us, which is also a very masculine trait, because testosterone increases that biophotonic energy, you understand me, within the body. So depleted testosterone depletes willpower as well. So it's saying that, for me, I always say that one act of masculinity is willpower, the ability to take thoughts outside your mind and produce them into reality. So if you have a people who are not able to produce their thoughts, then those people are lost without that will, right? Without that power, without that godliness. And so that's something that I think about often as I see our brothers and sisters hoping and wishing and trying to bring things forth, but they just can't, because that light inside them is dead.
Plus, a lot of the male in this society right now, they're being emasculated.
Oh yeah, sterilized.
And so, and a lot of it's chemical based.
Yes.
It's the food.
Chemical castration.
Chemical castration, man. It's all these microplastics that are, we're inhaling them, we're eating them. It's in the food, it's in everything. They did a test on those microplastics. They were converting male frogs into women.
Right.
This is just crazy stuff. So
that's a hell of a leap.
It's a big leap. That's a big leap.
Couldn't resist myself, y'all.
Oh man, but it's so true, and so it's taking away the testosterone levels in men are the lowest it's been since they've been recording them.
Right.
And so, to that effect, what you're saying is the levels are dropping, and the ability for men to make a lot of logical decisions is also dropping.
Right.
You see men now operating more off of emotion versus logic.
Right.
That balance of logic versus emotion isn't there anymore.
Right.
Sometimes there's a lot more men that are more emotional than women.
Yes.
So their plan is working out, and the plan for them really is to not let us discover our light body, not let us discover our light consciousness and the power that we really truly have inside of us to change and bend and mold this matrix to our will and overcome and supersede where they are.
Right.
What they want us to do is just continue to stay in these small little pockets, fighting each other over scraps, and not really ever getting to the higher levels and realizing that we're supposed to be able to bring our heaven right here to this earth right now.